The next knowledge session is realizing India's $5 trillion economic growth with space communication. Seamless communications form the backbone of the national growth. While the government has been making focused and concerted efforts to increase the footprint of reliable, seamless, high-speed broadband communications to cover the entire country, a wide variety of challenges have been an impediment. Space communications have a strong potential to bridge the digital divide and strengthen the backbone of digital communications within India. Space communications have been playing a crucial role in delivering data connectivity services for mission-critical applications in the most remote places. In recent times, deployment of low Earth orbit, small satellite constellations offering low latency, high-speed broadband communications have the potential to bridge the digital divide, open huge opportunities in various sectors that could include fintech and BFSI, transportation, Medicare and health, telemedicine, travel and tourism, education, e-governance, resource management, etc., which could power India's economy towards the $5 trillion mark. The aim of this session is to establish how space communication could contribute towards realizing this aspiration. Could I please call upon on stage the moderator, Mr. Pankaj Sharma, Partner, Regulatory Consulting, Ernst & Young. I would like to call up the speakers and the panelists one by one. Mr. H. Rayappa, Director, SATCOM, ISRO. Mr. P.J. Nath, Managing Director and CEO, Nelco Limited. Colonel Amit Oberoy, Director, DSA, Signals Directorate, Army Headquarters. Mr. Divya Sethi, Regional Vice President, AMEA, OneWeb India Communication Private Limited. Request all of you to please come up. And now if we could call upon stage and welcome the chairperson of this session, Mr. Rahul Vatts, Vice Chairman of ISpA. Thank you very much. Can I have a round of applause? I hope, it could be a time for afternoon siesta for many, but no, these are very important sessions. I need to hear louder claps, please. Much better. And I'm now going to hand over the session to you, Moderator. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Pankaj Sharma. I'm partner for EY in regulatory consulting practice. We are here to start a very interesting panel discussions today, realizing India's $5 trillion economic growth with space communications. So let me just introduce first of all, start with the chairperson, Rahul Vatts. He's vice chair of ISpA, and he'll be chairing the session. We have Mr. H. Rayappa, he's Director SATCOM ISRO. We have Mr. P.J. Nath, MD and CEO Nelco. Colonel Amit Oberoy, Director DSA, Signals Directorate, Army Headquarters. And Divya Sethi, Regional VP, AMEA OneWeb. I think the discussions that we had since morning, we have seen contribution that ISpA has done, and what the journey that has happened in last one and a half years or so. So, just to summarize and to give the context to the whole session, we know InSpace was set up as a space regulator around 12 to 14 months back. There has been a draft space com policy which has been announced. One of the very interesting things what has happened is in past 12 months or so, we have seen global SATCOM players, kind of setting up their plans for India. And then we had a couple of those players, they have applied for the so-called licenses in Department of Telecom. That has been a very important development. Also, I think when the initial plenary session was in place, one of the things announced by officer from DOT, DDG, is that TRI has come out with a consultation paper on licensing framework for Earth station gateways. I mean that also I think that's a very very important development which has happened. And of course, on 1st of October this year, we have seen launch of 5G by Honorable Prime Minister. So one of the questions that I would be tabling for panelists also would be around would we see a LEO constellation launch in the coming year 2023. With this, I think I would like to invite Rahul for the inaugural address. Rahul, one of the things if you also like to cover is, apart from as vice chairperson of ISpA, the journey that has happened so far, and also what are the growth levers in the SATCOM, which will contribute to the $5 trillion economy.
Thank you, Pankaj, for this session, and General Bhatt and all the delegates, sir. First of all, let me go in the reverse fashion. I think it's been really a humongous journey for us at ISpA. I remember meeting General Bhatt, I think maybe 15 months back, and when we started out the journey, the first half an hour we were actually debating what is the name of this thing which we are going to do, what do we even call it. And so that's the first discussion which I recall. But I think what ISpA has done, and I think Mr. Apparao mentioned it in the last session, is really the idea was to create a forum where we ignite space as an entire ecosystem. It is not just about SATCOM, it is about the startups, it is about manufacturing. I mean, I was so shocked to first time know that each ISRO rocket which goes, there are more than 800 vendors sometimes which are involved in the entire ecosystem. So it's not about one particular manufacturing or a startup, it's about the entire ecosystem which gets triggered up with the system. So I think that with that context in mind, ISpA has tried to espouse what are the necessary things to have the world-class space policy for ourselves, and then set up the parameter. Now, while this is happening, what is the background of things which are happening around the world? I think the world is shrinking. We all know that. The communications today allows you to connect anytime, anywhere. In spite of so much connectivity, in spite of more than 500 networks of 2G, 3G, 4G all across the world, there are large swaths of land which are uncovered, right? I came to know, example, in US, there is RDOF, which is like a USF fund which we have to cover our villages. There are large patches of places in US which are uncovered today by any network at all, right? And I think that is the opportunity which really lies, for this ecosystem. That is one, and that's one of the growth levers to connect everybody. The second growth lever is, it's not just about connectivity anymore. It's about what all do you do with this connectivity which you are going to get. Today, the expectation of the customer is very different. We are living with connected phones. We want to do our banking. We want to do education. Last 2 years, 3 years, everybody realized having a connected device at home allowed us to do education, allowed us to do medicine, allowed us to interact with everybody in the world. And by the way, India led it by example, right? So I think the having a foundation of digital connectivity is very important. So that's the second growth lever, is to A, be connected, B, be digitally connected. And if I now envelop the dream of the Honorable Prime Minister on top of this, which is the plain layer, is that we really want to trigger this entire ecosystem and create a solid base and foundation for us to go to the next phase and growth of an era. I think that is where the space industry right now finds itself. And I think we are at the cusp of a really big revolution. A lot of things have happened over the last 1 year. We have had multiple discussions on advocacy platform, on trying to espouse our view. And today we have a unified voice of our industry in form of ISpA. So I really look forward to another great year going ahead. And I think we have all the right ingredients in place to really launch ourselves into this entire journey. Thank you.
Hey Rahul, thank you so much for elaborating on growth levers. Uh, uh, Mr. Nath, let me bring you into the conversation. I mean, you have tied up with, Nelco has tied up with Intelsat, right? So, I mean, what kind of go-to-market strategy that, you are looking for as far as, this sector is concerned? And I think Rahul was talking about one of the growth levers is, connecting the unconnected. But do you also see the SATCOM contribution in the main connectivity as a connectivity option within the terrestrial network?
Okay. Thank you. Thank you first for inviting me here as a part of being one of the founding members of ISpA. It's always an honor to be there for any of the events that we have in ISpA. And really glad to see Mr. Kiran Kumar. I think he has been very important for us as a company as well in terms of where we are today. There's been a lot of work that we've done and when he was the chairman of ISRO. Okay, coming to Nelco, we are a satellite service provider and we are technology agnostic and we work with multiple satellites, multiple technologies on the ground. And we work with different types of satellites. Apart from different operators, we work with different satellites. And the way we choose these satellites is in terms of what is most relevant for a particular application. Our belief is that the satellite is a very complex area. You can't really have one type of satellite doing everything, right? For each application or different applications require different types of satellites. And therefore, we pick and choose satellites which are different. Now, you specifically talked of one of the relationships that we have with Intelsat. That was done primarily for two. One was to offer connectivity on aircrafts, and that is something that we are doing. We've been doing it for last since 2020. But again, we want to expand that, and that's another area where it came from. The other is that the particular satellite that we are using is a high-throughput satellite, and it's got a very good coverage over India, and we are using that satellite to offer services which are more suited with a high-throughput satellite. I think this is where we are. Having said that, we are also working with many other satellite operators, and then those satellites are serving different requirements, different markets. Right? I think that's where we are. Okay, the other part is that whether satellite will play, absolutely. With the technology development that is happening globally and which is also reaching India, and also the regulatory framework which is getting liberalized now, I think we can already see a lot of it happening, and far more is expected. A lot of expectation is also from the new space policy which is likely to come up. We believe that satellite communication will be able to play much bigger role, not only in the areas where terrestrial can't reach out, of course that is there, but beyond that also there are some applications, some sector which will be better suited on a satellite communication as compared to terrestrial. So it's a combination of both. So overall, satellite communication will play a far bigger role in the overall telecom arena as compared to what it has been so far.
Great, thank you, PJ. Mr. Rayappa, you are, Director SATCOM in ISRO. So could you talk in terms of what are the existing capacities which are available in SATCOM as of date, and what role do you see for the private sector, in this space?
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon to everyone, and especially good afternoon to Kiran Kumar sir, our former chairman here. Coming to current capacity being used over India, there are two types. One is the domestic capacity. We have today around 18 satellites in operation. They together provide about 315 transponders in various bands like C band, extended C band, K band. And also we have 3 high-throughput satellites, and high-throughput satellite was the first we introduced for the first time. Of course, we had its own challenges of creating an exclusive gateways which act as a common facilities. Again, there were some regulatory requirements which has to meet that thanks to DOT, they also enabled those things. And even the customers, the service providers, they had certain inhibitions in their mind. Now they have come on board. Now it is shown that the HTS platform is the most preferred one of the most preferred solutions in the satellite communication. We have about 25 Gbps of satellites. Of course, now in future, as part of the space reforms, now NSIL has been operating and will be operating all these communication satellites. With the space reforms and once the new policy comes in place, we expect the more number of players into playing. And coming to other capacities, that is the least capacity, which of course ISRO, our Department of Space, has been enabling to make the required capacity to suit the commercial and the technical requirements of the service providers and the specific bands. Also, looking into various technical considerations, we have enabled the industry to do that. I'm hopeful that in the future also, in fact, the situations will be much more flexible for the players to avail the required capacity, and finally the citizen will get the benefit of that.
You have also, I read about your profile, you have played quite an important role in NAVIC and Gagan. So you want to talk about some of the NAVIC applications? I mean, that would be really interesting to the industry, and how then industry can come up on the services side.
Yeah, NAVIC, if you see, it was not the first navigation positioning system it came into play. Of course, there were again global players. NAVIC was one of the regional system which we mainly focused to meet the requirements of the country. Of course, it provided all the facilities which any other global navigation satellite system provided. The one specific application I want to highlight is the messaging service using the NAVIC service. That was quite innovative, and it was focused on helping the fishermen at sea. So whenever there is an onset of any natural disasters like tsunami or cyclone, the fisher folks at the sea will be informed well in advance, so that there will be a huge advantage of saving lives and assets. Now we are also working together. We had another solution called distress alert terminal. We have clubbed both the things, so that the alert messages can go from mainland to the sea, and also the distress transmissions. When they are in specifically any one fisher boat gets into difficulty, they can also activate the distress alert that comes, and so search and rescue can be launched.
Thank you so much. Colonel Oberoy, I mean, you are part of DG Signals and responsible for SATCOM for Indian Army. I mean, one of the questions is that are the defense needs currently sufficiently met under the current regulations, and what is the future of SATCOM in the defense sector?
Yeah, firstly, thanks for inviting us, and thanks to ISpA for getting all of us together over here, because we realize that dealing with SATCOM, which is a complex field, as was brought about by Mr. Nath, every day is a learning, and communication is the key. And this, ISpA has provided us a means wherein we can communicate with each other and know each other's capabilities and requirements in a manner that one realizes that both sides, what we need, people are not aware, and what people can offer, we are not completely aware. So there has to be transparent communication, and we promote that as much as possible. And we realize that many a times there have been inhibitions on both sides, and we have been missing out on a lot. But with that at the backdrop, what I must say is that by far, Indian Army has got hundreds, almost 1,000 terminals which are operationally active, depending upon more than half of the ISRO's satellites. And we are doing very well with it. But these thousands are going to become 10,000 and even more in just a little time from now. So we are growing, and with the concept of Atmanirbhar Bharat and self-reliance, everything what we are doing now has to comply with the Buy Indian category. And because of that, what we realize is that every player now has to play up to the requirement of minimum 60% indigenous if you have to buy outright, or 50% indigenous if it is Indian designed, developed and manufactured. And we've seen a lot of positive response towards that. We have players who are playing up to the requirements. We're also looking at dual use, such as the LEO constellations. We have been in touch with the Airtel, OneWeb. We have understood what they are coming up with, how we can utilize that. We already have plans in place for that. And please do understand that as far as beyond light of sight communications or remote for remote locations is concerned, that is the primary use of SATCOM. And Indian Army has got innumerable locations, innumerable people, n number of Jawans at critical locations who are actually out of communication. Very, very, I mean, that is a place where we would like to give each and every Jawan of ours, you know, a handheld SATCOM device. Fine. So the kind of proliferation which we are looking at in the future, akin to the NTN convergence, right, with 5G is there. That is what our vision is. So I feel we are moving in the right lines, and with the present policies in place, we'll be able to gather steam and take it way forward. My only urge to the industry and everyone is communicate as much as possible and be situationally aware about the policies and the guidelines, and be as responsive as possible. And you will not find us lacking in any manner once you reach out to us.
Thank you, Colonel. Divya, you are regional VP for OneWeb, and obviously, what we hear about OneWeb, making a lot of progress in terms of, whatever preparations you're doing in India. So could you talk about some of the use cases, what OneWeb is really looking for in India, and how would it contribute, to the $5 trillion economy?
Thanks, Pankaj. It's a pleasure to be here among you all. Picking up the questions you have asked for, I think if we see from an overall perspective, there are two segments one can really distribute. One is the strategic use cases and other is the commercial one. So at OneWeb, we see strategic use cases and commercial business use cases equally from the segments to go after. And we are sure that, in India, that scenario is also applicable brilliantly. And therefore, it will contribute to the overall $5 trillion economic agenda of the Government of India. If I really pick up these two broader categories and dissect them, among the strategic use cases, I feel like, as we have already heard, defense forces, disaster management could be one segment. We could really help enable them with the fiber-like, connectivity across the locations. And it could be not only for fixed locations, but could be for mobile use cases as well. And the second, when we go to the commercial side of it, I think the use cases could be connecting any business anywhere without waiting for a great connectivity. So you could really imagine that how the SME and B2B segments could really grow when they could really think of having connectivity that to as good as a fiber capacity in Mesanas of the world, in the SIDCs of the world. We could really do that bit. So we can really fuel up the MSMEs and SME segment big time and ensure that they're spread out. The second one is, when you go to the far-flung locations which are like oil and gas, one wants to really connect the offshore rigs, one can think about OneWeb solutions coming into play. If anything mobile, starting from Indian Railways, Durantos, and the fast-track trains, one can really think of connectivity there. One can think of connectivity while in the aviation. One can think of the connectivity in the inland mobility as well, which is being talked about as a big goal. So I think all these segments and then of course the traditional ones, which is education, healthcare, which Rahul spoke about and PJ also mentioned about, are some of the segments which can be really enabled big time to really help the cause of growing the overall economy in many ways.
And what kind of user terminals, will be used, and would you be procuring them locally?
Very interesting question. I think, as I mentioned, that there are different type of use cases. One is mobility, other is fixed, and then enterprise. We feel that different type of terminals may be required, and that is how OneWeb is looking at the entire ecosystem this way. And most of our user terminals are built purpose for OneWeb, but they're being built globally by the renowned players like Inteleon, Meta, and all of that. So there are three broader categories we define as the type of the terminals we are bringing. One is the fixed one, which is going to help the enterprises connect well. The second one are the terminals which are helping the maritime, whether they are Navy or the other logistic carriers, to connect that. So that's the second one. And the third one is if you want to really ensure the mobility on ground. That's the third type of terminal which is coming into play. And of course, there is a fourth one, which is very small terminal, which is going to come up. So one can really take a look of the prototypes of all the three type of terminals on our OneWeb exhibition booth we have set up, so as to get a view of it. Specific question to answer that whether are we going to really source from India, I think it is too early, and of course we'll be looking forward to, but I think we have a huge tie-up with Hughes. They are developing some terminal for us as well. So that's one leg which we are really exploring. We'll see as it goes.
Yeah, I mean, the exhibition, which is there, I'm sure each one of you would have seen that exhibition. I mean, it's very, very exciting, and what we see, what the companies are doing over here. Just the last quick one from you. Any timelines for launch in India?
I think that has been a very hot question we have been facing all through. I think we are building towards that, and there are three components which have to come up. One is we have to bring up the satellite gateways in India. We are really working day in and out to see that they come up in shape soon. The second important aspect is to have the satellites in the orbit. So many of you would know that we are really working very closely with ISRO and NSIL to get our next satellite launch up in this month itself, closing to Diwali. And the third one is to really see that the space policy is in place. So I think it's a mix of these three things. We are working on all those angles, and we are getting enough support from everywhere. Difficult to put a timestamp, but I think it should be sometime next year.
All right. That's 12 months, Divya. So, okay. So I think we had this EY report. I'm just kind of opening up that who wants to take this up, and we saw a number around 13 to 14 billion kind of number for Indian market. I mean, as industry veterans, where do you see this number going, in terms of FDIs and investments in India? Mr. Nath, you want to take it, or Rahul? Yeah.
So let me say that you have been very conservative with your estimates, is what the first observation I want to make. I think EY itself provided the first indicators earlier, I think this year, maybe late last year, which talked about India's share of the global economy. And that is just less than 2%. Right now, I have a very strong feeling, and that we are capable of much more, in this entire sector. What is the basis of this confidence? I think is this entire ecosystem which we currently are, the people out here, and the energy which has now started flowing in for last 2 years. Right, we have got InSpace in place now, and at the launch of the InSpace, where PM was there. There were inaugural MOUs signed with a lot of startups. Skyroot was there, Pawan was there. A lot of energy which I see in the system, and I have said this before, actually reminds me, and Pankaj, you will know this better, of like a period 20 years before, when we were in telecom. We were just launching the telecom, right? I get a lot of vibes like that when I see these things happening, right? So I think my overall estimate will be that we are going to much exceed that number. As far as the FDI is concerned, I think we already start seeing a lot of investment flowing into the ecosystem now. A few people have already got, the venture capital. And once the confidence grows in the system, I think it's going to be much more. Take, for example, the case of OneWeb. Right, they say there's a blessing in disguise. We were supposed to be running up with a satellite, and you were asking about time frame for OneWeb. So we were in a situation where we had to reassess, pause, and here we are with ISRO working together. I mean, we never imagined it around a year back, but this is, where we are. And I think it's a wonderful opportunity to re-trigger the entire sphere again, right? And these are the opportunities, because if one SIM triggers, this goes well, the world knows now that this is the right place to go to. Now, what are the options when you are doing it? You could have gone to Starlink, you could have gone to ISRO, you could have gone to a few others. But if you are in the World League, and if you are able to do this successfully, very well for others, you just, trigger the entire space. The second part of my confidence is the exhibition area, which you just mentioned. See the amount of work, which you see out there. It's amazing, what all you can see in the terminals, in the things, the applications which are being, see Rohan's work, for example, the Map My India work. I mean, it's really good quality stuff you are getting. And then finally is the use cases, is the demand, right? Sir is right. Why should anybody who's at a far-flung border area, why should he not have access to communication? As Airtel, I have won subsidy projects in Arunachal. When I go out there are kilometers and kilometers we walk, and I don't even see a single electricity pole. But beyond those 200, 300 kilometers, suddenly I see the whole army platoon out there, right? So these are practical challenges. To run a fiber down to that place, it's like not possible, right? But with the satellite, it will be possible, right? You just have to put a terminal. Your own mobile can function as a device. So I'm saying the use cases, the entry point, the green shoots which are already emerging in the system, I think we are looking at a much, much steeper number. I'll not hazard a guess, because I think my friend Ravinder might be a better person to hazard a guess on the numbers, but I think we are in for a very good and solid period ahead.
Okay. I don't want to really give a number. There are very many reasons for doing that, because we get quoted, and it kind of impacts many things beyond that. But suffice to say that we believe, and we see that happening, that SATCOM will be growing multifolds in the next few years. I think that's for sure. And again, I think earlier I had already said some of the reasons are technology developments that are happening globally, and which is now, globally it was always happening, but in the last couple of years has been much higher than what was earlier. But more importantly for India, we have not been able to get a lot of the new technology which are getting developed into the country for very many regulatory restrictions. And we see those things changing. So I think that the regulatory framework changing in the country would make a huge impact for satellite communication in the country, apart from that. The other thing that we are seeing is in terms of, I'm again coming more from a communication service provider perspective, that the capacities will be available, much larger capacities will be available at much more affordable prices. Today, what was also happening is that while you have capacity, the prices were also significantly higher. Now it helps in one way that, okay, your revenue is high because of that, right? But it affects in a bigger way because it is not being accepted in many use cases. In many of the sectors, you can't really do it. So our belief is that with more capacity available, with the right kind of price points, with different flavors of capacity in terms of different frequency bands, different orbital slot capacities, there'll be many more use cases which will come up, which are not seen today, right? There'll be a combination of different types of satellites across different orbits, different bands, different frequencies, which could be serving a larger requirement. With all these things being possible, the numbers could be very large, and which, while theoretically possible, has not been possible in the country so far for very many reasons. And I think that's where we believe that it is, the industry is up for big growth in the next few years.
I couldn't agree with you more, and the way Rahul has been saying, we have seen that kind of an exponential growth in adjacent industry, telecom, but we can see many more. Mr. Rayappa, you want to add?
Yeah, I would like to add a few things. One important observation, two observations. One is we are talking about the SATCOM as only a service, utilization, applications, and all those things. Of course, when you talk about the contribution of space communication to the economy, there are so many other areas which probably will have to look at it. For example, if you see that even the building of satellite, launching of satellite, those are the activities. Even on the satellite platform itself, now there is a significant change in the thinking itself. So the way satellites are built, the way the technologies are adopted on the satellite. For example, now the trend is to go towards a flexible payload and software-defined radio payloads, so that wherever the capacity dynamic demand comes, so the satellite need not have to. Conventionally, we were building satellites within a certain band over a certain area. If there are no customers there, it was lying idle. It adds to the economy. That's where the prices go up. Now, if you adoption of new technologies and new innovations, there is a possibility that you can bring down the things. The second one, the philosophy of having again the satellite catering to one particular application has gone now. It can be, a satellite can dynamically cater to different coverage, different applications, these kind of things. Second one, coming to particularly contribution to Indian economy, we see there are so many elements which we need to look at as a second observation I was telling is, we are not only in this session, we are not seeing any startups and young bloods here. We are only seeing all experienced people. Maybe here also we need that young people to come and look at it. What is that we need here? For example, though we are a big user of the SATCOM services, still the entire user segment, be it except antenna, of course all that minor equipments of modem or buck or whatever it is, still we dependent on external resources. If there is a way which can be done in India with much improved cost, definitely it will add to the maximum utilization and contribution. Coming on to the again spacecraft platform, there are important components like the amplifiers, power amplifier, TWTS and all those things. Still, there is an opportunity for the young people to take up and develop, and be it even atomic clocks and all those things. So this will all add to the space economies. I think there is a great opportunity, and now once the trigger has come to do the things with the industry and in a new way, I'm sure it will propel faster.
Fantastic, fantastic. Are we doing okay on time, sir? Can we take a couple of questions? Okay, anybody from audience for any questions for the panelists?
I have a question to Mr. Rahul. And having worked in the telecom space, and as you rightly said, today's satellite is where telecom was maybe 20 years back in terms of the policy framework. So what, according to you, is the top learning? I don't want to use the word suggestion, but what, according to you, is the top learning that you want to be borrowed from the telecom space into the satellite sector, so that India's contribution towards the global satellite economy is much more than the 2% that we're talking right now? Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's a very good question to have. I think what are the three big learnings if I have to just transplant into this space? I think first is that you need to encourage investments in the sector. Any sector, if it has to grow, it needs investment to happen, because investment spurs growth, spurs innovation, and then it's a virtuous cycle which just kicks up. So I think, and how does investment come? It comes because A, there is opportunity, B, there is a predictability in the regime of what is going to happen. So I think the first learning is promote investment, bring predictability in the regime, so that I'm clear when I'm investing, because satellites is a long horizon business. It's not a business where I will invest today and I will get an immediate return tomorrow, right? So I need a time period in which I'm going to make investments. That is the first thing. I think the second was to have the right structures in place, which I think already we do have. We have a regulator in terms of InSpace. We have ISRO and NSIL who are charged up, full of passion and energy, who are really promoting the sector. And C, we have got stakeholders, which are a mixture of big corporates and startups, right? So in terms of structures, I think we're already there. Telecom took nearly a few years to get the structures correct. But fortunately for space, that is something which is clearly there. Third is that, like any other industry, it's a nascent industry. It's like a small child. So when the child is growing up, it requires his hand to be held. So things like spectrum, for example, let me take a reverse. If the spectrum is not given to me in the right quantities or at the right prices maybe, that will impede the growth of the SATCOM. If it impedes the growth of SATCOM, it will have a ripple effect on the entire space ecosystem, right? So that is a larger effect of what you are doing. So you have to create enabling policy framework which allows the industry to grow. That is one thing I'm sure in space, TRAI department and the Department of Space are really going to work on, is to create that right incubation for this industry to grow. Because 3-4 years of this handhold, after that industry just shoots up. Then the job of the regulator changes. After that, the job of the regulator is to actually tie strings to the industry to say that you have to behave in a particular fashion. Right? But this is the stage we are at, and that's what we need to do. Thank you.
Very, very comprehensive answer, Rahul. Thank you. One more.
Hello. Yeah, my name is Rishabh Vashisht, and I'm actually working in IIT Madras, and I own a startup. And I've been we have recently got a tender to supply 103 drones to Army. So my question is to Colonel Amit sir, that you said that you're open to address any query with regards to if any private venture or if a private member comes to you. So what are the channels? For example, let's say if I want to extend my UAV, like fixed wing drones, and I want to test with the satellite communication rather than the radio links. So what are the channels through which I can approach you or maybe the concerned authorities so that I can leverage that possibility?
So there's no problem as far as this is concerned. It depends upon which stage of procurement, manufacturing, prototype development, etc. that you are in. There is a clear provision, even highlighting the previous discussions. There is a clear provision in the DAP how we will give you those, we will assist you in coming up with your solution. But coming down to specifics, if you have a solution in place and you require a SATCOM, channel to come up, depending upon your contract, etc., because I have done it for a few players before on a NDC or a non-disclosure basis, we would give you certain band, right, on which you can communicate depending upon your requirement on which band you need, Ka, KU band, etc. Yes. So there is no issue as far as this is concerned. You can connect to me offline and let me know. But what I had highlighted was that just don't hold yourself back, must reach out, communicate and go ahead with all the steam ahead. Don't think that, okay, this is the end of it all. Right, and this platform and ISpA being the agency has provided us this kind of a, via media to be one so that we can go ahead with this. So there is no issue at all. You can connect to me separately and we can discuss your particular case. And I'm sure there will be a solution to that.
Well, thank you so much, sir.
With this, we conclude this panel discussion. Could everybody get a good round of applause for panelists?
Thank you very much for that session. And I would request the chairperson of this session, Mr. Rahul Vatts, to please present mementos to our moderator and our panelists. Memento to the moderator, Mr. Pankaj Sharma, partner, regulatory consulting, Ernst & Young. To our panelists, Mr. H. Rayappa, Director, SATCOM, ISRO. To Colonel Amit Oberoy, Director, DSA, Signals Directorate, Indian Army. To Mr. Divya Sethi, Regional Vice President, OneWeb India Communication Private Limited. And to Mr. P.G. Nath, Managing Director and CEO, Nelco. Once again, could I trouble Dr. A.S. Kiran Kumar to please present a memento to our chairperson, Mr. Rahul Vatts. Thank you. May I request all of you to please huddle for a group photograph? Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you very, very much.